Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Happy Tuesday, June 16th, 2020. And this is our monthly AltEd community webinar. So I am Annie Margis. I've personally met most of you. There are a few of you that I haven't met. But it looks, or at least in person, but I've definitely spoken with most of you on the phone. So thanks for joining me today. So there's a lot going on, both I'm sure in your schools and programs with your staff, and of course in the world, as if COVID wasn't enough. So I just want to acknowledge that as we're looking forward to next year already, that we're dealing with a lot right now. So I just want you to know I've been thinking a lot about your students and your staff, particularly your students of color and your staff of color, and just holding them all close as we navigate, hopefully in a new way, navigate and bring an end to all of the racial injustice, even if it's just one bit at a time. So that's where we are. I think that I just want to kind of dive in. Hopefully you all have seen the guidance that was released last week for the next school year for 2020-2021. That guidance will continue to be updated. The next update will be June 30th, and then it'll be updated again in July and August. And those updates will include, or they hope to include, feedback that we receive from you, from districts, from students, from parents and guardians and families. So it's a draft. It's where we are right now, and we know that that could change. The guidance could change based upon where we are as a state with COVID. It could change based upon governor's recommendations. It could change based upon what we're hearing from districts, knowing that different districts are going to look differently. Our rural districts are going to their back to school will likely look different from our urban districts. So it's an iterative process, and this is just where we are right now. So today, I just wanted to give folks an opportunity to, not sure why, there we go. Give people an opportunity to ask questions of each other to see sort of the plans that you all are considering, to ask questions of me, though I will likely not have many answers, but I will take those questions back to people who do. And then just have a discussion about what school looks like right now for those of you who have classes over the summer, for those of you who are thinking about shifting your model into fall, and to just hopefully learn from each other, hear from each other, and kind of see where we are. So if folks would like to, it would be great to just hear who's here. You can just go around and say your name and program you're from. And I don't.
I'm Alvin.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, hi, Alvin. I was just going to say, I don't think that I have you all muted. I think you have yourselves muted. So I hopefully I won't have to do any of that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Alvin Johnson from Rosemary Anderson Middle School. Everything's crazy, literally. We're beginning our summer school program next week, the 22nd, 3-week program. And we had a 2-hour session today, my staff and I just planning that all out. And so we'll be rolling that out really soon. Yeah, just like everything is really in the air as far as fall is concerned, I'm with the middle school, it's really something, since we started distance learning, we have some students who really thrive in the distance learning, and then we have some students who'd rather be in the building. And so the students all year last year that weren't doing very well at all end up really thriving in distance learning. And so I'm hoping that at our site we can do, you know, some of both. And that's probably how it's going to be anyway. But if we can be able to make those choices of those students who are doing well distance learning wise, if we can make that happen, we just trying to plan it out.
Great, thank you, Alvin.
I can go next. I'm Megan, and I'm at Serendipity Center. And yes, it's been a challenge to, in 14 days, pivot from supplemental learning to distance learning. Now I have a summer to pivot from distance learning to with the guidance for next year. It's hard given our kids and they're being referred for physical aggression often. And so what does that look like via distance is going to be, via like 35 square feet will be interesting. I agree that we also have some kids that have thrived doing distance and some that haven't. I'm really concerned about sort of FAPE because we have so many referring districts. How do I make sure we do a free and appropriate public education for everyone? And I tend to be a little bit more in equality as opposed to equity for that particular topic. I do equity for a lot of other things, but as far as no one is allowed to go 2 minutes early to the bus unless it's written on their IEP, like I do equality for things that are related to FAPE. So I'm a little bit concerned about, is it possible for me to treat my kids equitably, i.e. think about maybe my kids with significant developmental disabilities being in the building more often than my kids without that. Like I get really anxious that that could be an issue of FAPE, and no one knows, right? All issues of FAPE typically are solved through litigation, and I don't want to be the test case, and I don't want our districts to be the test case. So I'm a little anxious about that.
Thanks, Megan.
I'll talk. Hello. Hi. I'll talk for a second. My name is Michael Moretic. I'm from Sarha Children's School in Eugene, Oregon. And we've been registered with the state as South Ed School for about 5 years. And then this is the exciting year that we get to figure out what happens next, right? So this summer we don't have any programs, and I'm happy about that. We just can think about it and also watch the horizon and see what's going on in our state and around the country. I think I probably have similar concerns to many of you do. It's just really things are just like changing before us, and it seems that any plan we come up with, however flexible we try to be, there's a really good chance that we're going to have to change it kind of midstream once things start happening. And what's that going to be like? And then the other Megan brought up, I think, is like I went to the dentist, was the first thing they opened phase 2 here in Eugene. You know, they had like a 3-page, just what is it, a COVID don't sue me form? Like, what is it?
Wow.
Not a disclaimer, but what's it called? It's like you're not going to hold them liable for anything even related to this, the words or the sound of COVID, you know. And what are our schools going to do in that case? You know, the dentist got me for like 20 or 30 minutes, and they're all protected with hazmat suits and stuff. But we've got like people coming and going, parents and everything like this. The exposure to risk is going to be much higher in our schools. And to what extent can we protect ourselves from liability in the best way? So that's something I'm concerned about. And then the other one is I had something for Annie. I sent an email a while back. I don't know if she replied and I missed it. but we submitted our application for the year in, I think it was the end of March or April.
Mhm.
But we didn't hear back one way or another whether you're going to register, list us for this year. Is that going to happen? And if it's so, when can we expect to know that?
Yeah, sorry about that, Michael. I thought I responded. So, and we'll talk about that process next.
Mhm. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
And also, first time I came on here, so I'm happy to see other people, other fish in the tank. Okay,
Thanks for joining us.
thank you. All right.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erica Davis. I'm the program director for contracted alternative schools with Portland Public Schools, and I support our now 9 private alternative schools. For the most part, they're all private alternatives that contract with the district for all its services. Nice to see everybody.
My name's Scott Cooper. I'm down in the Southern Tier, representing alternative youth activities, a couple programs. We just lost one of them. I'm doing some residential stuff over the summer, and I'm riding the wave, getting ready for whatever may happen next. So we'll see. The online stuff is tough to make relationships with, but there are ways of doing it.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Call on the next one. How about 2G?
Hi, my name's Cheryl. I'm with the Looking Glass Riverfront School in Eugene, and I haven't made it through the document yet, but that's on our list to do, and then see how we can get ready for school in the fall. We had mixed results with the distance learning, and I know our kids are really eager to get back in the building, and so we're going to see how we can make that happen. I think our physical space will accommodate the small size classrooms with the distance. But we'll be working out all the details this summer.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Cheryl. This is Jen from Wellspring
Hey, Jen.
School. I'm a neighbor of Cheryl's. I'm very jealous of her building at this time because I do think physical distancing will be significantly easier there. You know, I have been through the document. I've been through all the documents. The shifting landscape is difficult, and it's really difficult for us to convey the sense of confidence that we need to our students and families when we don't know what's going on. I know that especially because the guidance is going to look different for different districts, it does seem to me to maybe like try to make sense to tie them to the phases. So that, you know, maybe transportation and things like that does become less restrictive if you're in a phase 3 county versus a phase 1 county. But yeah, just like everyone else, we're in the thick of it. This time of year is always difficult with our population, knowing that we're going to let them go and worry about them and what's going to happen for the next 2 months. And this is no exception to that. And yeah, you know, just also concerned that making those new relationships in the fall, that we're going to have the enrollment of kids to make those relationships with. That's actually a welcome struggle for us. We're really good at that relationship building. But yeah, always just happy to be here and hear what the rest of y'all have to say.
Thanks, Jen.
This is John Bouchard, COIC. I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'm just COIC in Bend, Oregon. Like everyone else, we're prepping for September. And we've just had quite the exciting spring, as have had we all. With that, I'll sign off.
Thanks, John.
Hello, I'm Jeff Laff, the ESTA College Manager at PCC. I think we are pretty much similar to everyone else, trying to figure out how to make the best of the situation. We're going to be remote going into the fall. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the school districts we partner with make determinations about that and what that does and doesn't do to our enrollment. Because as a college, we're going to be providing all of our instruction remotely. And it would be great if there was more GED testing opportunities around the state.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm
Hi,
Katie
this is-
Carpenter. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Judy, please.
I'm Katie Carpenter, and I am the Assistant Executive Director at Oregon Outreach. And we contract with a couple different school districts here in Oregon, one in Molalla and then Scappoose, and then a separate school out in Portland. So we are going to be interested in how these different school districts put their plans in place, because we have to align with them since we're in their buildings, and then kind of develop our own processes to meet their requirements. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Kathy, did you want to go?
Yes. Hi. Sorry, it was the handoff from my granddaughter Sawyer to her mommy. So it's been kind of crazy, right? At this last 10 minutes. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy. I'm from Central Oregon. I was from Southern Oregon for 39 years, and I keep saying Southern Oregon, but I'm from Central Oregon now. I work with the alternative programs in Central Oregon, including John Bouchard, who was just on, from COIC, J-Bar-J, Boys Ranch, Oregon Youth Challenge Program, and a number of other programs. So it has been quite an interesting spring. I don't know if John, I was giving the handoff of my granddaughter right at the moment, but I don't know if John mentioned that he had an on-site graduation for over 30 students last Saturday. And I was invited and included in that. It was very nice, very well organized and COVID appropriate. It started at 10 a.m. and it ended about 2:30 in the afternoon. He had groups set up, groups of 6 students at a time every 45 minutes. They had parking spaces designated. They had parent spaces designated. It was really wonderful, and the students were able to wear caps and gowns, and they had pomp and circumstance playing, and they moved their tassels from right to left, and it was just awesome. So I wanted to commend John for doing that for his students. Let's see, Oregon, I did want to mention that J-Bar-J Boys Ranch is an Oregon correctional facility, and the students are boarded there. So they've been having on-site school with teachers and their special ed program, and they have not shut down. So that's been an interesting process. Don't really know what things are going to look like moving forward, although I will give a brief report from Central Oregon, because I've been on several meetings, including one today with our High Desert ESD Chief Information Officer, who seems to know a lot about what's going on. And Ben Lapine is planning on-site classes for K-5. That's almost certain for next fall. That's the plan. The superintendent Shay Michelson said that 6th grade, which is in the middle school, will be the next priority, and they're trying to figure that out for on-site. So I know that about Ben Lapine. I did hear today that Crook County, which is Prineville, is planning to have a menu for parents, and they can select on-site, they can select distance learning, or they can select a hybrid, which I'm really shocked that they're moving forward with that. But that is their plan. So that's the news I have so far about school ready to open in the fall from Central Oregon. I don't have reports from the other school districts. Annie, you've been a great support. I love being in alternative learning with all of you and hearing the great things you're doing. So that's about it for now.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Jessica, are you still there? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move forward then. Well, thank you everyone for those updates. It's good to hear, that we're all in the same boat. I mean, even I don't have students anymore, certainly, but certainly with you in spirit and with all of your students in spirit. And at the ODE, we're just, scrambling to figure out how we do this, how you do this. So I really appreciate hearing where you are, what you're thinking, how you're approaching this, and just again, good to know that that you are all in this together, and hopefully you can lean on each other a little bit. So I want to just go through the timeline for the private, those of you who are private community-based organizations who are contracting with districts. That's actually most of you on the call. Just to talk about that timeline a little bit, and then we'll get back into the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance and see what additional questions you may have. So we have received the applications. We have, I believe I've told you that we have a panel. There are 4 of us who are reviewing the applications. And that is by design, because I look for every opportunity to try to invite my colleagues into the world of alternative education so they can learn about the amazing work that you do and what that looks like. I think that the more people at ODE who have AltEd within their framework, I think the better. So we are going to meet on the 30th of June and go over each of our bundles of applications and see if there are any questions or if there's anything that we need to return for clarification to any of the schools or programs. We'll spend the first 2 weeks of July just seeking clarification, returning things if we need to, coming back to you for questions or additional information if we need to. And then the hope is to send out letters of approval before the end of July. So at this point, no news is good news. So if you haven't heard from me that in the next few weeks, and that means that we have everything we need and there are no questions. And then I'll send out those letters before the end of July. So any questions about that or the timeline? And we realize this is late, and of course, COVID is, pushing everything back. So it's, less than ideal, I'm sure, especially as districts are looking at how to serve all of their students going into this next school year. So we'll get those out to you as soon as we can, and then we'll update the list if we need to on our website. There are actually a lot of updates that we need to do on our website, and that's just one of them. Okay. So if there are no questions about that, let's return back to Ready School Safe Learners. And what I can tell you, well, several things. We know that in light of the budget cuts that are coming, the idea of all of the extra protocols that are going to need to be in place for on-site learning, I understand that is an increased cost. And it's like the worst possible time to have increased costs that aren't directly going to instruction. So do what you can. I mean, you all are the most creative people in education that I know. So you're used to doing everything you need to do with not much resource. So that's encouraging. Thanks, Annie. But I'm aware of that extra layer of burden on you and your students and your staff. So we know that each school will look differently. As I said in the beginning, each district will likely look differently. So it's really up to you and your leadership to figure out what makes the most sense for your students with your capacity. So, and that could change. So we also recognize that the plan that you will develop, and I confirmed that all of our alternative programs, our private contracted programs, all schools need to develop a plan. And we understand that that plan, just like the guidance, will be an iterative process. And depending on where we are as a state, and depending on, if and when we get to phase 2, I think Multnomah County isn't even in phase 1. And if and when we get to phase 3, that those plans will change. And we know that. And hopefully that's a good thing, that you have that flexibility. And I guess just the other thing that I wanted to point out is just all of the work that was done with the guidance was done in conjunction with the Oregon Health Authority, and just thinking, what is the absolute minimum that needs to be done to keep our students safe, to keep our staff safe, and to keep the families safe that they're going to go home to. So if they have a home to go to. So it's a lot. And there's a lot to think about. And again, I would like to open it up to all of you and to hear your questions or your concerns. If you have questions about, what the different iterations of the guidance will look like, how to bring that feedback to ODE, so that we can be as informed as possible when we put out those new the new versions of the guidance. Just any questions that you may have, and again, if I can't answer them, I'll find answers for you. But yeah, I'd like to just give you this time right now to ask questions of me, of each other, questions you would like me to bring back to ODE leadership, whatever you've got.
Hey, Annie, this is Jen again. I was just curious. So this does seem like the minimum, right? Like things aren't going to get looser. And the follow-up to that, I guess, too, is how different do you think the guidance released in 3 weeks will be? If you had a guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think it depends on the numbers, right? It depends on we're seeing a spike, but we don't, I heard something the other day, people were saying this isn't even the second wave, we're still in the first wave of COVID. Yeah. So, I think the governor said, she pushed pause on counties who were just about to open up, and she said, let's wait a week. That may change to 2 weeks, that may change to 3 weeks, I don't know. My guess is that feedback that we hear from superintendents, from district staff, from school level staff, from families, that may be integrated and that we may look at some things differently. I'm not involved in the writing, my director is. There's a whole team of directors that are involved in the writing, and I think that they're just, well, I know that they're just kind of waiting to see, because it's impossible, right? It's this impossible task. How do we help people know what to do when we don't even know what it's going to look like? So I don't know. That's the short answer. I should have just started with that. Sorry, Jen.
There's a lot of that going around. No,
Yeah.
that's okay. I mean, and that was my original thing too, is, you know, how do we communicate? Like, I know every district is facing this right now, but for one thing, we work with 9 districts. And for another thing, our population is pretty fragile, right? And so they're already in a position where maybe they don't have regular communication with teachers, or the fact that they're now at Wellsprings is, and we do that, is novel to them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, part of me just likes to hear that other people are, you know, also in the same boat. So I do appreciate that you just admitted that you didn't know, because, you know, it's hard to think that someone knows and you don't, right? And fine for that.
I can confidently say that nobody knows. I don't know
Yay! But my ongoing concern too is, you know, what can y'all do to help us? Let's say we go back and we just have to do remote learning.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of resources could be available to us to help us continue to develop our program in a way that is meaningful, that differentiates us from, you know, the district's online school?
Yeah.
And, you know, are there conversations with those districts to sort of protect alt eds and their value? And, you know, like, I know a friend of mine who's a public school social studies teacher, middle school. She had 125 students she was supposed to be tracking during the closure. And, you know, just saying like, well, we only have 50 that we need to track is great, but I don't know if it's enough of a sell. And I think particularly because we've been forging our own paths for so long, that some additional professional development through ODE about, you know, either the online hub or how to best use it, or just in general, some alt ed specific support. What does alternative education look like online would be awesome.
I agree. And I know that at some point, and maybe this is coming in the June 30 guidance, but there's going to be another look at distance learning. You know, distance learning for all, as I think Megan, I don't remember if it was you or Megan that mentioned, that was like, there was this hard pivot, right? We were going to do supplemental, and then it became distance learning for all. And the distance learning that we're looking at going into fall is it's being called comprehensive distance learning. So I do know that the folks who are working on that are trying to re-envision what distance learning looks like. And there have been lots of conversations about how does the ODE, you know, what's our role in helping districts or small programs pivot again into this virtual space, or maybe they've been in a virtual space, but maybe they're trying to figure out, well, how do we do this better? So, so there are a lot of those conversations happening, and I think we're in this sort of hurry up and wait, because we, you know, the folks who are writing the guidance, they get a deadline. They talk to everyone they need to talk to. They gather as much information as possible. They put it out, and then we sort of wait and see, like, okay, what are people saying? What do they need? And it sounds like with these different iterations, there's going to be more of that. And what I want you to hear in this is that we know that we need to be doing something to help you all. And I think that that's a really good point of like, how do you make a case, especially in light of budget cuts? How do you make a case for the kinds of relationship building that I know you're all doing? How do you do that in a, you know, with this remote learning space? How do you re-engage students who have been disconnected? How do you keep them engaged? So these are conversations that we're having. And again, all I can say at this point is stay tuned, and we're working on it.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, one last thought, and then we'll let someone else talk. Because I was on a different ODE, like through the math section, and they were just like, so yeah, we're not going to do remediation. We're just going to go faster. And whoever wrote that policy does not work in all day. And so, you know, I've always appreciated the advocacy you've done for us, but it's just on so many levels now that I also want to just make the actual, you know, curriculum question part of the conversation. Because yeah, it's just not going to work for everyone. So that's that feedback. Thanks.
Thank you for naming that.
Hi. My question that I would love answered outside of the lawyers we contract with, because I think they're also just making it up too, because no one really knows, is really that FAPE question. I feel like I've been okay with FAPE because everyone's getting the same distance learning. But if I'm thinking about what's equitable next year for 35 square feet amongst people, and if I know some of my kids, it's harder, let's say, with developmental disabilities to be able to access online learning, am I allowed to have those kids in the building more often as opposed to my kids in upper school? I mean, they also need to be in the building because they need it for relationships. They need it. So I'm not saying I want to make that decision, but I need to know, can I? Like, is that, I just feel like it's a legal gray area that I'm not comfortable, again, being at the forefront of. So if there's some guidance about FAPE in sort of equitably delivering these services as opposed to equally delivering them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Megan, are you connected to any of the SPED people at ODE in particular?
No, you are lovely and you respond. That has not been the case for some counterparts.
Okay. Okay.
But if you want to send me an email with their names, I will totally become BFFs with them.
Well, what I'll do is I'll have a couple of conversations and see who would be best suited to answer that question for you.
Yep. And then my other question, and I've looked at the preview of the document as opposed to the actual document. I haven't had a chance in trying to do everything else. So forgive me if this did actually end up in the previous version that just was sent out last Wednesday. And that is, I would love some specific guidance for everyone, especially for us, for students in traditional life skills room and for students in traditional self-contained behavior classrooms, because everyone has a version of those classrooms in every single district. I'm struggling that somehow we all, without ODE guidance, that we all need to figure out that for ourselves. And so, for instance, in the call that I was on with ODE, you know, life skills, you know, teachers and IAs who work with kids who need more physical prompting, they're going to be within their bubble. Are they supposed, I mean, we can have them wear face shields, like that's fine, but I just want someone to tell me that's okay. That's okay, that like, yes, I can have them be in the bubble and they need to wear face shields. Like, that's helpful. I need to know that as opposed to me interpreting the guidance for, again, a population that every district has. So I don't know. I know it wasn't in the original preview that I got, but I don't know. I know a few of us on that call asked for that, so I don't know if it ended up in the next version.
Okay. Okay, I'll ask.
And then the other thing that was said in that meeting, which I do think that will be helpful for all districts, not just us, was there was some great, to paraphrase from that meeting, there was some really good guidance about that we shouldn't punish kids for not following sort of COVID-19 and social distancing rules, which I 100% agree with. What people were saying on that call, which I also agree with, is if you don't tell the adults what the replacement behavior for that should be, some of the local area principals like Gen Ed, you know, might try to kick kids out to special ed or programs like ours. And like, not that I won't accept more kids, but I don't think that's the solution. And so they were really asking for some guidance around that. And as well for my population, staff already struggle when our kids are very aggressive with them, understandably, but that's the population that we serve. Again, I want to know, how are we supposed to respond to, let's just say, a kid with conduct disorder who's purposely spitting on us? Like, right. I'm okay with not using punishment 100%. I don't like using punishment generally, but I need to know, what am I supposed to do instead besides what we usually do: restorative practices, collaborative problem solving conversations, like all these things that again, when my staff are potentially at risk for contracting COVID-19, seem, they, I don't know if it has social validity, if you will. So those are the questions that I would like.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So other questions or concerns? Questions for me? Questions for your community here? Any messaging you would like me to take back to ODE?
I had something to bring back to ODE.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll put my camera on.
Okay, Erica.
Frizzy hair here. I just wanted to continue the conversation around aging out, and just the repercussions of school closure, especially for GED students, and how there were like specific in Division 22 waivers that were made, just considerations of students that are either about to age out or will age out.
Yep. And Erica, I have that question to our legal folks, and I'm just waiting to hear back.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to a lively discussion about whatever they say.
And Erica, that's a district by district thing. Can the state actually give guidance on it and actually see some change on that?
Well, I mean, I think it has to do with, can the school get paid for serving a student who's aged out? It's not so much can the school serve them, of course they can, but will they get paid for that student? I mean, all of us, I'm assuming, I know when I worked at POIC Rosemary Anderson, we took lots of kids who aged out that were close and just got it done and got them there, but not every school, has the ability to, or their policy allows them to. So I think something with guidance from the state would be helpful to. Once again, we all provide a lot of services for free, as we know, and so we want the money to follow those services. So.
Yeah, I've always just eaten that in the past as the right thing to do. And this year I'm looking going, how do I hook up with a community college to kind of catch them on that other side, do GED at least when they start aging out. So yeah, no, great, ladies. That's I'm happy to hear somebody's on that.
That's because of my colleague here, Jeff Laff, who's sitting on my right corner here in the little square. I appreciate his urgency around that subject and many others.
I had one more question, which was in the preview of the guidance, we asked if Division 22 instructional hours were going to somehow be updated, and they said yes, but it's not in the guidance, sort of, like there wasn't really an answer to that. As someone who has to make the calendar, I can't make the calendar, and I have district transportation people being like, you've got to give me the calendar, and I'm like, that's great, like I can't. And so some guidance around that, and how we, if we're calculating 35 square feet / how many hours I don't even know how to pretend to do that without guidance.
Sure. Is there one piece of this that feels the most daunting, or does it all just feel like it's way too much because so much is unknown?
Mine is definitely staff safety, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly student safety as well, but staff safety.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just say an Oregon thing. I think once you get out of Portland or Eugene, the perspective changes. This is a very red state when you get out of those areas.
Yes.
I've got a picture of one of my parents with an AK-47 on her back, yelling at one of my board members at a protest. They didn't even know each other, that their kids go to the same school or anything, but it's just really, really unusual. I wish we could have these conversations right now with the kids. It really is a good time to have these conversations, but school's over.
That's a good point, though, Scott. I mean, I think in general, as I said, we know that depending where folks are in the state, this is going to look very differently, in part because of the communities and what what the communities are calling for, and that's also why we're receiving feedback, because we want to make sure that each community can do what's best for them. Doesn't make it easy, but I think that's an important piece. Well, I'm guessing that as each of you digs into the guidance more, and as the subsequent versions come out of the guidance, that questions will arise. And so please reach out. You all know how to.
So
me.
It's me again. Sorry, I have one more question. So how is regular ed gonna do this? You know, the high school next to me has 1,500 kids.
Yeah.
So, you know, we might be way better at this than they are. But where can I sit in on those discussions to see what it looks like when people have substantially more resources, to see what they're going to do?
Well, and my guess is that obviously it's, district by district. So find the districts that you contract with, find out how to get in those conversations. I think that you're right. There is more resource there, but there are also, as you mentioned, a lot more students. I think that for the alternative community, you have a lot, the number of students that you have in your communities is much, much lower, which in some ways right now is a good thing. Again, doesn't make it any easier, but it's perhaps a bit less complicated. But I imagine that at the district level, those conversations will be happening. And again, part of the guidance is for the districts to be engaging the parents and students and hearing from them as they make their plans.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that, I mean, first of all, I feel for the people who mentioned dealing with multiple school districts, because that's where I feel it's going to be a challenge, particularly because when I read through what has to be done, I think it's insane to even think that you're going to get a middle school or high school into the building and out of the building in a safe manner. I can't picture it. But to the other part of the point is, like, I filled out a survey today from my son's school district. And one of the questions is, am I going to remove him from the school if I have to send him to classes, or if he's only at home? So the school district is polling the families to see what their tolerance is for what they're going to do. And, that's you could figure out who it is, but it's the third largest district in the state. I don't know how they're going to get kids in and out of the building. I just can't imagine it.
Yeah. And as Kathy mentioned, what Ben Lapine is doing is they're focusing on K through 5.
Okay.
And that's where they're starting. And what I'm hearing from other districts is a similar focus on those younger students. Yeah, I mean, who knows at what point, especially if we're looking in, our more populous counties, at what point high schoolers will return to the building. I have no idea. The point, though, about different districts and all of the different districts and what they're doing, for those of you who contract with multiple districts, those of you who are private contracted, you create your own plan, and that's not dependent upon the districts that you contract with. That's your plan. At least that's my understanding at this point. So recognize that, yes, all of these districts are going to have their own plans, and they may look differently school to school within the district. So you do you. Figure out, again, how can you best meet the needs of your students while keeping everybody safe.
Annie, can I ask you a question? This is actually something I don't know about, and a few questions came up, and it seems it's not as relevant to this conversation, but it came up when I heard about being surveyed about if you're going to pull your student out, because that to me leads me to think our district's scared they're going to lose tons of kids and lose money. That's kind of where my line of thinking goes.
Mm-hmm.
When you pull a kid to homeschool, the district does not get that money for that student anymore, right? If they're released from compulsory education because they're being homeschooled, or does the district still get the money for that student?
Nope, that money goes away with that student. So, and so those of you who don't know, I'm also the homeschool person at ODE. So I've been getting, yeah.
I didn't even know. Now I have more questions for you another time.
I've been getting, I mean, I can't even tell you how many calls from parents saying,
I'm sure,
we're homeschooling for the rest of the year, maybe into next year because of all of this.
Yeah.
And I've had homeschooling parents call me and say, where's my money?
Yep.
The school's not getting it. It should go to me. And that's true. The school doesn't get it, but then it's just stays in the general fund.
Right. I mean, they don't get funds for their students while they're homeschooling, obviously, right? Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't ESD get a piece of that? That's where they're running the numbers through?
Nope. No, the ESDs, homeschooling families register with, well, they don't register, they notify ESDs. ESDs are the ones that collect test results, if at all. Some do, some don't. And then they report to us numbers, but it's an imperfect.
They have obligations with no money attached.
It's incomplete data, and the ESDs don't receive any funds for that.
And can you apply to homeschool your child at any point of year? But if that money is already dispensed to the district holds on to it. It doesn't reconcile. They don't have to true up right at the end.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know about that. I just know that families can homeschool. They can decide to homeschool at any point. And they can go in and out. So they can homeschool for a period of time and then return to the public space for a period of time.
Right. They always have the ability to go back to the public system if they want.
Yep.
I'm hearing rumors that they're going to open up the door and a kid can go wherever they want without interdistrict transfers. Just rumors. That's what I'm hearing.
I don't know about that, Scott.
Okay. It was a rumor. There's no confirmation, but I know that's what
I would love that. I can find out about that.
Jeff, you and I would never be on the phone if that was the case.
You know what, Erica? I'm sorry, but our relationship could be on the downhill slide if that's the case. No, that's not quite accurate. But I would be very. How do you find out more, or where do you think you might find out more information about that?
Well, I know that it's one of the features of the Washington State Open Door program. And when Oregon took on re-engagement legislation in the last full session last year, that was, one of the things that got dropped of many, many things. And the eventual re-engagement legislation ended up not looking much like the Open Doors program. But I don't know. I mean, talk to your legislators. There's a special session.
Well, the other thing I saw is that even though the budget was small to begin with, about a third of the re-engagement budget that was put forth was already scrapped. So I don't know, just going on that principle, and not that a lot has been done already, I'm kind of curious about how much movement there would be in terms of developing a re-engagement system within the current environment. It's just got to be more challenging for that to move forward.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Well, I have a meeting with the new re-engagement coordinator tomorrow, so I'll learn more, or Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, people, it's 4:00. I want to be respectful of your time. If you have more questions, please ask them. If not, you can always call me or send me an email, and I will respond as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Annie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe, be well, take care of yourselves, please.